Welcome, y'all. Welcome to returning friends. Welcome to new friends. For people who have been with me every session, you are awesome. You are fantastic. I've loved every minute of our conversation. Looking forward to this last one, to putting a pretty bow on the top of everything that we've talked about. So as people filter in, we'll give them a couple more minutes, and then we will go ahead and get started. Just as a reminder, please reserve the Q&A function for specific questions for me or program questions. Please communicate in the chat function. That's where I will be looking for responses. Someone said they can't see me. My video is being shared. I'm not sure why you can't see me. I'm sorry. I think it might be something on your end. Thanks, Gabriel. Thank you all for the kind words. And it really is, as a facilitator, there's no better compliment than I enjoyed the session or I got something out of the session. So thank you all for the kind words. I truly appreciate it. Thank you. That's very sweet.
Well, I think it's safe to say and fair that we are super, super thankful for you students and advisors who have come to all of our sessions.
Yes.
When we started this idea a year ago, we thought, well, if we could just get maybe 1 or 2 students from each district, we'd be. And y'all have just blown it out of the water. It's amazing.
Sure have.
You.
It's all about change. It's all about change. You have to be adaptable.
I see you, John. I see your comment.
I love to hear that. We're going to keep it up.
We are.
We've
got a lot of exciting things coming up for the fall, and I can hardly wait. So,
John. All right, y'all. We are going to get started. Again, as a refresher, please reserve the Q&A function for specific questions. Please chat in the chat function. You can send messages directly to me through Q&A. I will try my best to answer all of those accordingly. Other than that, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the opportunity to share the space, even though it's a virtual space. Thank you for sharing the space with me. And thanks for coming along on this journey, this Creating a Culture of Care series. As Michelle was talking about, we talked about it over a year ago, and we sort of had this notion of how do we create this culture of care? How do we create more compassion, more empathy, equipping you all with these specific tools, and what does that look like? And seeing it over these last 2 days and seeing how engaged you all have been has been a treat for me, because our hope is that as you all have gone through these sessions, you want to bring these conversations back to your club. You want to have these important and impactful conversations with your community, because we know that's how we show care, is by facilitating, by being a leader. As you've heard me mention several times, leadership is empowering other people around you. And by having these conversations and opening up that space, that's truly empowering for people. So thank you for being here for this last and final session. We're going to talk about what it means to be a trainer, what that looks like. And these are tips that I'll share with you all today that have helped me in my career as a facilitator. There may be more that you know of or more that you would add to this list, but these are some essential things that I carry with me in my suitcase that have helped me along the way. So hopefully they're helpful for you as well. I was just speaking with Michelle. There will be a certificate that will be sent to you all for participating, certificate of completion. I know several people have asked me about that. And it's to say that you were a part of this process, that you were engaged and you participated and you attended these sessions, and you are ready to take that next step to become a facilitator in your own program. Along with that certificate as well, we are going to make this curriculum available to you. So everything that we've talked about the last 2 days will be available in like a facilitator guide, and that will become available to you at a later date. So stay tuned to that because we will have some follow-up for you all. Anything you want to add to that, Michelle?
Yeah, just another goal for this is that we will be meeting with this group, the cohort that finished the courses and really wants to be a trainer within their community, within their school and club. We will have some support webinars throughout the school year where we'll get together quarterly and make sure that we're getting you the information and resources you need to be a change maker in your community.
Awesome. Can't wait to keep working with you all. So you have made it to the last and final session of the Creating a Culture of Care, or CCC series. Let's go ahead and talk about ways that have helped me become a better facilitator. Some questions to keep in mind as we have this discussion. What is my role as a facilitator? What does that mean to be a facilitator? And you will hear me use the word very intentionally, not teacher, not sort of a person who just stands in front of a class or a group. A facilitator is a very intentional word. What tools do I already have and what tools do I need to continue to develop in order to become a facilitator? I will always say that we are all capable of being facilitators. Some of us may be a little shy speaking in front of people or may have our strengths and weaknesses, but we're all capable of being a facilitator. And we will talk a little bit about that today as well. I know that you all have heard me say that you may need a paper and pen. Again, if you want to jot down some notes, I highly recommend it. But if not, again, you can screenshot it, you can take a picture, whatever it may be. But I will be sharing some important tips with you today. So what's your role? When we say facilitator, what does that look like? What's your role as a facilitator? I think first we need to start by trying to understand where participants are coming from. We've talked about empathy throughout the last couple of days. We want to ask questions to better understand where people are coming from, and we want to help guide them in group reflections to sort of critically look at trying to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. By modeling that empathy for our group as a facilitator, we are then showing them how to use it in a very specific way. Encouraging empathy is the first step in creating that culture of care. We don't have all the answers, we never will, but the role of the facilitator is create an open and respectful environment which students can feel comfortable sharing and learning from each other in a safe space. We want to promote reflection. This is really important too. We want to provide enough wait time for participants to reflect when responding to inquiries. Sort of how when I've asked you all for responses over the last couple of days, I want to give you ample time to sort of self-reflect and think about what those might be. So whether it's a few seconds or a few minutes, depending on how much time you have, you want to give some time for people to stop and think about what their answer may be. Probably my most important, the one that I use the most, we want to promote acceptance and inclusion. We want to promote an environment where everyone is welcome, regardless of skin color, race, sexual orientation, gender, or religion. We want to review our own assumptions and biases and prejudices, because as we've talked about, we all have them, but we want to avoid bringing them to the group. You don't want to bring those to the group. You don't want to sort of steer the conversation in a specific way based on those biases. Because the more we are aware of our own personal biases, the more we can ensure that it doesn't reflect in the group or reflect in our line of questioning or thinking. So try and check those at the door is what I like to say. We want to create a horizontal learning experience. And what I mean by that is a horizontal learning experience is creating a space where participants can learn from each other and also learn from activities, from active participation in activities, So a lot of learning from each other. As you all have seen over the last couple of days, I've been reading people's responses. That's because I want you all to know how other people are responding to these things. It's a lot harder to do virtually, but when you're in the physical space with people, creating that horizontal learning experience is really important. Let people speak up, let people say what they may need to say, because that's a big piece of learning from each other. I always say as a facilitator, I learn almost as much from you all than you all do from me. You never stop learning. We continue to learn from each other. Be aware of your position of power. The reason I use the word facilitator is that we know that an imbalance of power exists between a facilitator and a participant. We don't ever want to abuse or take advantage of that position. We have to do the things that allow us to be on the same level as participants. We are all people learning from each other, and none of us are perfect. We want to treat participants with kindness and respect to build that equitable space. And some other things to be aware of, you all will have noticed by now if you've been with me for any session, I always do a trigger warning, because some of the topics that may come up, or some of the discussions, you may not intend for it to be triggering to someone, but we never know what can be triggering. We never know what can be a sensitive topic for someone. So with that in mind, we want to pay close attention to what may be a sensitive topic to someone, what may be a struggle for someone. We have to understand that as we talk about facilitators, we have to know where our resources are. We have to familiarize ourselves with the resources. So if we need to refer someone within our group, we are able to do that. That's why I've been sharing so many resource slides with you all throughout the couple of days, is so that we say, you know what, I see that this person is struggling. I see that they may need some assistance. I have the resources for you. So you talk to them after the session, or that you follow up with them after the session, and you provide those resources for them. And lastly, I can't emphasize this enough, changing attitudes and behaviors is a process, y'all. Sometimes it can feel like it's taking forever. Sometimes you're butting heads with someone who disagrees with you. But we know that it takes time, and it takes repetition. And participation in these activities that you all have been doing, it won't necessarily lead to an immediate transformation. However, it's a really big step towards promoting that personal growth and that personal change. So we have to look at it incrementally. It's not going to happen immediately, but the more you have these conversations, the more you open that dialogue within your groups, the more people are starting to experience that self-growth and that self-change. So I'm going to list 10 different tips for being a good facilitator. And like I said, these are things that have helped me become successful, become a better facilitator over the years. These tips will help you to encourage and create a respectful environment in which participants feel comfortable sharing their opinions and experiences, as well as listen to and learn from other people. So as I list these, I'm going to list all 10, and then we'll go through each one, and we'll talk about how I've used each one throughout facilitation. The 10 tips for being a good facilitator. The first one, do not judge. Second, promote inclusion. 3, address participants' concerns. 4, know and use referral services. 5, appreciate honesty and openness. Promote movement and interaction. Manage your time. Keep discussions from going too far off from key messages. Carry out the activity, but be flexible and creative. And lastly, use icebreakers and energizers. As promised, we are going to talk about each one individually. The first one, do not judge. Remember, we are here to facilitate discussion and reflection. Your role is not to punish anyone or to judge anyone. We want to be friendly. We want to create rapport with other participants. And like I said previously, we want to be aware of our position of power, which means that we want to avoid judgmental and sort of those authoritarian attitudes. We never want to impose our feelings on the group. Second one, promote inclusion. And this is inclusion in many different ways, like I talked about previously, including people regardless of skin color, race, religion, sexual orientation, gender, whatever it may be, including people regardless across the board. Everyone deserves our respect. But this inclusion piece also means ensuring that all participants have the opportunity to speak. We know that at this point in time, just being there, just being at the table isn't enough. We have to create the space where people feel comfortable speaking and using their voice. So we have to be careful not to let one person dominate the conversation or make other people feel that they cannot share their opinions. We want to encourage people to share their experiences and learn to identify when people want to speak, but may be too shy to say something unless called upon. I usually fall into this category. It may seem crazy, but I'm usually the person who's like, I want to say something, but I'm not really feeling courage enough to say something, kind of on the shy end. So I would probably fall in that category. If a participant begins to take over a group by spending too much time with the story, and this is really important, find an opening and kindly say, it sounds like you have a lot of valuable experiences to share with the group. That's really great. Do others have similar or different stories they would also like to share? So you're acknowledging that person, you're acknowledging the expertise and the experience they bring to the table, but at the same time, you're asking other people, who else would like to speak up at this time? It's a very kind and way to sort of address what's going on in that situation without offending that person. So hopefully that's a helpful tip. We want to address participants' concerns. Your group, whatever group you may be working with, can serve as an important opportunity for participants to receive feedback. As a facilitator, it's important that we validate those people's concerns, but we can also address it in the larger group, helping to propose solutions, sort of asking the group, how do you think this problem could be solved? Or has anyone faced a similar situation? What would you do? Some of these questions you've seen me ask over the last couple of days when I've opened it up to the larger group. How would you handle that situation? What would you do? Not only does that promote self-reflection and self-growth, but it also helps people learn from other people's experiences as well. Know and use your referral services. I can't harp on this enough. As you all have seen a couple of slides, I've listed the suicide prevention helpline. We mentioned last session that Kiwanis International just launched the new youth protection service line, the youth hotline. I will share that again. I can share it with you all again. Please, please, please know your resources and utilize them. They're there for you all. They're there to serve you all. The new youth protection hotline is staffed 24/7. Your call goes to someone who's a trained professional, and then it gets rerouted to your youth protection team. So please utilize your services and refer them to people who may need them. So we know that some problems participants may face require outside support. We are not the trained professionals. We are not the experts. That's why it's so important that we know sort of where those resources lie. This can be a really, really tricky one. It can be very hard because many of us know honesty can hurt in a lot of situations. Someone may become offended, but I encourage you all to sometimes sit in that uncomfortable feeling of honesty and openness. We want to encourage participants to be honest and open. They should not be afraid to discuss sensitive issues for fear of ridicule from their peers. And this is something that you all may or may not have noticed. We want to thank and commend the group members for sharing their personal stories. Anytime someone feels sort of the courage or the comfortability to share something personal with me, I will always say thank you because I appreciate that as a person and as a facilitator. I appreciate that you feel comfortable enough in this space to share something that sensitive. So let's keep that in mind as a facilitator. We want to make sure that we are honoring that and that we are commending people and we are thanking people for having the courage and feeling comfortable enough to share. We never want to force anyone to participate in the activities. Instead, try to create an environment in which the participants feel comfortable enough to participate. Six, for all my Hamilton fans who are looking forward to tomorrow, we want to promote as much movement and interaction as possible. Include as much physical movement as possible so that participants remain active, alert, and they stay interested. I encourage you to use short energizer activities in between activities in order to keep the participants engaged in the topics you were discussing. As I mentioned in the very beginning, these energizers that I keep referring to, you will be able to find them in the back of your facilitator guide. We'll have a list of energizers that you can choose from. If you feel like the group needs a little bit of a shock, they need a little bit of a jolt, like everyone's a little bit tired, there'll be a list of energizers that you can choose from and say, hey, let's go to that one, let's do this. So keep that in mind as well. I'm not throwing away my shot. I am not, Laura. Manage your time. Full transparency. This is what I probably struggle with the most, because it can be very, very difficult to manage your time when there's a good conversation taking place, or there's a really organic conversation that just comes out of nowhere and you're like, yeah, let's run with that. That's awesome and that's great as a facilitator, but you don't want to get caught up in that conversation so you miss out on some of the content that's really important in the actual lesson plan. So try and keep track of your time. Try not to spend more than a few extra minutes on a given session, because we also want to keep in mind not only participants' attention spans, but everyone has a schedule, right? Everyone has a different schedule, and we have to think about that. Keep discussions from going too far off from key messages. One of the main facilitator tools that you can use is sort of this quote unquote bank, or the parking lot. If someone asks a question and you can't answer it in the moment, like right for virtual, right, I have the Q&A, I can come back to those. But if you're in the physical space, you may not have that function. So you may have to write it down on a piece of paper or a whiteboard or whatever it may be. And you can call it whatever you want, but that's something that you're going to come back to. And try your best to address that whatever time you can. If you need to follow up with somebody after the session is over, you can always do that via email, via text, whatever it may be. But remember, we want to acknowledge that person's thoughts and that person's concerns. So we're going to write it down, and then we're going to follow up with them later. So try not to get too far off topic, because that can be really hard to do. However, if the topic is completely unrelated to CCC, you can always say something like, you know what, that's a really great comment. We don't necessarily have the time to address that right now, but let's talk about it later. We want to carry out the activity, but at the same time, we want to be flexible and creative. If the topics and examples are presented in the activities that we have done together over the last couple of days come across as too far removed from your personal reality, or not culturally relevant to you and your peers, feel free to add examples from your daily life experience. As we create this facilitator guide, it is just that, it's a guide. It doesn't have to be followed verbatim. The cool thing about it is that you'll be able to make it culturally relevant to your culture, to your group, to whoever you may be working with, because some of the examples I may use may not be relevant to what you're doing. Maybe where you go to school, people don't like Hamilton at all. They don't like music. That sounds crazy to me that people live in a society like that, but it's true. There are people who don't like musicals. So maybe a Hamilton reference isn't what they're looking for, or whatever reference I may use. So I want you all to make it culturally relevant to your surroundings and to your peers, because that's most important. We know that that helps participants sort of engage at a higher level. It helps them connect on a different level when things are culturally relevant to what they're doing. Icebreakers and energizers. And these are really important. as the very first session, I sort of had you all use your imagination and pretend like I was giving you some candy. I still haven't found that candy myself personally. I'm still looking for it. But that's an example of an icebreaker. That can be something that you all use in the very beginning, getting to know you, breaking the ice. Often very helpful if you're going to have a difficult conversation to use icebreakers. It can be used in many different situations. Sometimes if you feel like the group is bored or you just want to do something else, something different, throw an icebreaker in there. Get people up and moving. Get people using energizers. Like I said, there will be icebreakers and energizers in the back of your facilitator guide. We'll have a list of those that you can choose from, where you can just interject those wherever you feel like they are necessary. But this has been a great tool for me. Anytime I'm going to have a difficult conversation with the group, I almost always start with an icebreaker, just so folks become comfortable with each other. You get used to sort of just that mode of sharing, that mode of speaking in front of the group. It can be useful in many, many different situations. Sorry, it looks like there are a few questions here. I believe so, Kyla. I believe you will still be able to receive the facilitator guide. So I wanted to open this up for a discussion, because this is our last session together. And I haven't really had, since we've been rushing through so much content, I haven't really had the time to just stop and chat with you all. So I would just like for folks to just type in the chat function, what is one tool that you learned over the last couple of days that you're excited to use? What's one tool that you're taking away that you're like, I can't wait to go back to my community and share this. I can't wait to go back to my club and do whatever it is. What's one tool that you're taking away? I want to have a good conversation with people. Intervene even if it doesn't seem right. Awesome. Effective peer communication, energizers. Make sure that I listen with the intent to understand and not reply. Awesome. I love that answer, Anna. To be honest and open to people. Good. Icebreakers, the 3Ds and bystander intervention. Love it. How to be a good facilitator. Better communication and utilizing these tips. The art of listening, peer communication. Listen with the intent to understand, not respond. The 3Ds. Awesome answers. Conversation tips, listen to understand, not to reply. I feel like that really resonated with folks. That really resonated with me the first time I watched that video. Like I said, I'm often someone who is listening to someone tell a story or having a conversation with someone, already formulating how I'm going to reply. And the second you start formulating how you're going to reply to someone, that's the second that you stop actively listening. Because I am a processor, I often use that as an excuse. I try and process immediately. I try and process quicker than I normally would to formulate a response. Sometimes it's okay just to say, I need to think about what you just said. I need to process that for a minute. To take a pause and just say, I heard what you said. Now I need to process what you just said. How to hold better conversations, youth protection guidelines in your presentation, icebreakers, awesome. Horizontal learning, the 3Ds, peer relationships. Love the answers, y'all. Don't judge others. Utilize icebreakers and energizers for the committee I'm leading in my school. Yes, Elena, yes. Peer communication and sharing the seminar content with others. It's helping me learn how to confidently communicate with fellow peers. I love it. Thank you all so much for your responses. I love seeing the tools that you all are taking away and you're excited to use. Listen, listen, listen. The session was perfect for advisors and students both, setting healthy boundaries. Yes.
Sorry.
No,
Burton, someone has asked if you could flip back to the 10 tips for facilitators.
Absolutely.
While we continue to take questions. And also, don't worry about writing those down. We're going to get this to everyone.
You will have all of these, I promise.
We also have had the majority of our questions are, oh, I missed session 1 or 2. How do I get that? Stay tuned. We're going to get everything to you. We'll probably host some additional trainings yet this summer. So we get everybody who wants to be part of this program the information, tools, and resources they need to feel comfortable as we begin the new school year.
Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So quick question. For the list of 10 tips, just type in what you think is the most valuable to you. What do you think is a tool that you will use the most or hold closest as you think about becoming a better facilitator? Which one of the 10? Inclusion, managing time, not judging others, inclusion, time, honesty and openness, inclusion, awesome. That was perfect. Okay, let's see these questions. Have you already gone through the questions, Michelle?
I am trying to go through the questions in the Q&A. So one thing is about how we access the facilitator manual. So if you have been in these, if you're in this session right now, we have a recording of everyone who's logged in, and we have your email. We're going to send this out to you. We'll also utilize our Key Club emails and kind of newsletters that we send out to make sure that we get everybody the information that they need. So we'll probably do a call out in a couple of weeks. It says, if you've not received information, contact us, and then we'll do a second set of training and get people what they need. Again, if you weren't able to attend all 4 sessions, we're going to figure this out and make sure that everyone is included and that you get the information to participate. We've got a couple weeks before school gets back in session, so we'll use that time to get more people trained.
This is one I think I can answer. For new facilitators who aren't the best public speakers, what general tips do you think are useful for improving? This is an age-old one that I know is going to sound super cheesy and super corny, but standing in front of a mirror and speaking to yourself in a mirror, if you have a speech or if you have something that you're working on, or whether it be the curriculum, it is tremendously helpful. And this may be, some of you may believe this, some of you may not, but I am someone who struggles with speaking in front of people. I get nervous when I'm public speaking. I have like this raw anxiety when I'm about to speak in front of folks. So to sort of ease that, I often do that. I'll talk in front of the mirror. I'll look at myself. I'll pretend. I also use my children. I often have them as my audience. I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. I'll present to them because that's easy to do. If there's someone within your life that you're comfortable speaking in front of, practice in front of them. And sometimes it can be helpful for people to imagine a family member in the audience, or maybe they're speaking to a specific person in the audience. Some of those tools can help people, but there's really no one cookie cutter solution to overcoming sort of that anxiety of public speaking. I think in general, practice. In general, it's tough for most people. There aren't many people who are like, I love public speaking. Sure, there are a handful of them, but not many people are like, this is my jam. This is what I love to do. Most people have to overcome a certain level of fear to get to that point. And it takes practice. It takes repetition. It takes knowing your material. That can always be something that really boosts your confidence. If you're solid on what you're about to present or what you're about to talk about, that can often make you feel more comfortable.
And I think too, the practice piece, it's not that you practice until you get it right. You practice till you can't get it wrong. And also I think a lot of, thankfully today with technology, you can have the reminders and stuff on your screen. You can use props. Like, you don't just have to stand up there cold with no notes and kind of talk at people. The more interactive and activities you can have, I think it makes it easier to relax.
In full transparency, this entire thing has been a little weird for me because like I said, I'm someone who likes being physically there in person with people. I like gauging how the audience is receiving the information that I'm putting out there. I also just like generally engaging with people. I like to see people smile or laugh or nod their head, or be engaged or make eye contact, and all of that's lost virtually. So this is a completely new world to have to go through. And as Michelle said, when you're there and you're looking at people, it's a completely different, it's a different vibe totally. So this talking at people with no sort of feedback, I appreciate that you all have been typing in the comments. Like, that has helped more than anything for me as a facilitator. So thank you all so much for that. But when you're just talking to a screen with no feedback, that can feel super weird. And because we don't know what the fall will look like, we don't know what it's going to look like moving forward. Some of us may be a little bit more virtual than we're used to. So keeping those things in mind, as we put the facilitator guide out there, there will also be tips to help you if you're facilitating things virtually as well. So we'll keep those things in mind as we put these out. Questions? How do you prevent yourself from judging? Everyone would have different ideals, so how do you present yourself from being judgy? And that's a loaded question because it takes a lot of self-reflection. It takes a lot of self-growth. I think with that, without being non-judgmental, first we have to realize the biases that we have. We have to realize sort of how we view people and what lens we view people through. Once we have the understanding of, okay, this is how I see people, this is where my biases lie, then we can sort of check them. Like I said, check them at the door. Then once you know that you may feel a certain way or that you may have thoughts about a specific person, you can sort of check that at the door, because now you know, and now you're actively thinking about it. And that's a first step, and it's a small step, but I think that can be helpful in sort of reframing it to think of how you can see people in a non-judgmental way.
Oh, hey, Burton, here's kind of a philosophical question. So
I love philosophical questions.
Well, buckle up. What do you think most leaders in the world need or are lacking in as of right now? So while you think,
how much time do y'all have?
Yeah, right. So I'm going to say empathy, but also intellectual curiosity. Like, always continue learning and don't be afraid to dig in and learn.
I think empathy is probably right up there with me, as well as compassion. Empathy and compassion, I don't think you can be a leader until you can understand the people that you're leading. Until you can put yourself in their shoes, until you can understand why they are the people that they are, I don't think you can call yourself a competent leader. I think a lot of people in our society today who call themselves leaders lack that empathy and lack that compassion. So for me to make a decision that affects a lot of people, I have to be able to put myself in those people's shoes. I have to know that the decision I make is going to be the best for everyone. And that's a really tough thing to do. I'm not going to pretend like that's easy to do, but I think when you look at leadership, empathy and compassion can go a long way. With the same token, being able to make those really tough decisions. Bunch of questions coming in. I will try to answer them. Did I not share my contact information? I'm so sorry. I do have a slide with my email address on it. I will put up here.
And then for everyone who's in this culture of care, if you become one of our culture of care champions, we're going to have a special Kiwanis email for you to interact with us. We are getting that set up now, and we'll get that out to everybody as well.
I like this one. What was the best advice you ever got or situation you learned from that helped you as a facilitator, if you don't mind me asking? The best advice or a situation where I learned, I will probably say, and this may sound cliche, but I've learned more from sort of my failures or my weaknesses than I have from like moments of success or moments of triumph. And oftentimes, as in the work that I do, I speak with a lot of college-age males about healthy masculinity and rape culture. And as many of you can imagine, not many 18 to 22-year-old males want to talk about healthy masculinity and rape culture. So I've seen a lot of pushback, a lot of negativity surrounding those topics in that conversation. And I'll share one specific story. I was working with a basketball team on a campus in Indiana. And I already came in, like I said, with those preconceived notions and those biases about how the conversation was going to go. As a former college athlete, I know sort of the culture surrounding athletics on the collegiate level. And I sort of had these thoughts in my head. And I didn't do the tip that I gave you all, which is to check it at the door. So I walked in like, this basketball team is going to say some misogynistic things. They're going to be sexist in their responses. So I had these preconceived notions already. So I'm talking to the basketball team, which they're like these 7-foot tall guys who are all standing around me, and they're huge. And I don't feel very small in many spaces, but I felt tiny in front of them. And I'm having this conversation with them, and I show a video about rape culture, and a woman gets sexually assaulted at the end of the video. And I see their faces, I see them sort of taking it in, and I see one specific person who's sitting near the front. And he has this quizzical look on his face. I can tell he wants to say something, but he's not sure if he wants to in front of the group. And they give the appropriate responses like, that was terrible, that shouldn't have happened. We would have done this, we would have changed this, we would have prevented this. And the one guy that I mentioned was just sitting there. And then finally towards the end, he raises his hand and he says, well, she deserved it. She deserved what happened to her. She shouldn't have been drinking, or she shouldn't have been in that environment. And in that moment, even though I expect responses like that, it was sort of a gut punch to me, sort of took the wind out of my sails. I was like, oh, but that's a learning moment. And that's something that we have to remember as facilitators, is that even in those times when someone says something unexpected or something that truly affects us, we have to use those as learning moments. This is a teaching moment. This is where we can help each other. This is where hopefully we can have an open conversation about why what you said is problematic. And the coolest thing happened for me right after that. We broke into group discussion. I know I'm super long-winded on this, but it was an impactful story for me. After we went to group discussion, I overheard his teammates pull him to the side and tell him why that was problematic. And for me as a facilitator, that's exactly what we want. We want sort of that group mentality of, we are going to learn from each other, we're going to wrap our arms around each other, and we're going to care about each other. And me caring about you is telling you why that's wrong, why you shouldn't have said that, and why it's problematic for you to view it in that way. Super long-winded answer, Laura, but I hope that's helpful. Take those trying moments as a facilitator, turn them into teaching moments.
I'm still typing away, answering questions in the chat and in the Q&A.
Okay. I will try and answer a couple more. I see we are towards the end of our time right now.
So, and just as a disclaimer, we do get all of the questions sent to us afterwards. So if we didn't answer you, awesome. Melissa, I'm going to voluntold her there. Melissa and myself will be reviewing these, make sure we got everybody their answers. And like I said, we're going to be following up as we get through the summer.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you all for being here, for participating, for doing the work that you're doing as leaders in your clubs and in your communities. I think the world of you all. I've loved doing this training with you. I've loved seeing your responses. And I appreciate you all. So thank you for being here. Thank you for participating. I hope to work with you all. I hope that we can be in the same space together in the near future, because I think that would be really awesome. So thank you all for participating and being a part of this series. I look forward to working with you more in the future.
Thanks, everyone. We'll be in contact soon. Watch out, take a look in those Key Club emails that we'll be sending after the event and in the newsletters for more information. And have a wonderful, wonderful holiday weekend coming up for those in the US.
Enjoy the rest of your summer.
Yeah, enjoy, or winter. I think we had somebody from Australia.
Or winter, yeah. Enjoy the rest of your seasons.
That's right.
Bye, y'all.